The views and comments expressed on the following radio program by its hosts and their guests do not necessarily reflect the views of rmconair.com or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Peace. This is the Knowledge Self Radio Show. I'm your host, Jerule Allah. Got my brothers with me. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Peace, Jerule Allah.
Peace. Name's Infinite God Allah.
Peace. My name is Toure Allah.
Peace. And actually, Infinite is our special guest host on the show, so it's glad to have you here with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Peace. On the show, indeed. So today on the show, what we're going to be talking about are Los Angeles gangs, crack cocaine conspiracy, although it's not really much of a conspiracy, and in the 80s and then the politics of genocide. But before we get into that, I know you guys had some current events you wanted to talk about. Jerule?
Yeah, so peace. So Hugo Chavez, we all know that he passed last week, so rest in peace to him.
Indeed, peace.
I don't want to necessarily go too much into it, but he was a president of Venezuela, and I found it interesting that he died of cancer, and there were 3 other presidents who suffered from cancer at the same time that he had it. So I say all that to say that if you really look in depth into like the CIA and some of their covert operations, they utilize different types of chemicals and things of that nature that could cause cancer. So, like I said, people should do a little bit more research on it. There's a Press TV article. You could type in Google Press TV article on CIA assassinations. So the other presidents that also suffered from cancer were Dilma Rousseff in Brazil, and Fernando Luga, as well as Luis Inácio Lula da Silva. So yeah, do some research on that. That's interesting.
Okay, and that's a very rich area of the land, right? There's a lot of oil. They have their own natural.
Right. Yeah. So the thing about all of those presidents, they didn't want to deal with America in any capacity. It's interesting that you see that all of them have that relationship. They basically wanted to, hold on to their natural resources and not let America have access or control over these resources. So
kind of like Gaddafi, huh?
Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, the list goes on. So
that's peace. Okay, indeed.
Yeah, the corruption continues even on a local level. So it was a report aired over the last week about Mike Rios, member of the Moreno Unified School District School Board, who was just sentenced to 14 years, and he's been charged with pimping. And apparently, he had been approaching young women, and also he had a small group of people participating in this type of activity, and he was presenting his school board card to these young girls when he was approaching them on the street, according to U.S. Newsweek. So, being an educator, it's true. The system is pimping our kids, and there are pimps running it in some cases.
Right. So now they're pimping inside the schools and outside the schools.
Yeah, true indeed. Exactly.
Deep. Deep. Okay. So indeed, jumping into the show, I got a quote for you guys from Brzezinski. And he says, to put it pungently, in early times, it was easier to control 1 million people than to physically kill 1 million people. Today is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. So that's a powerful quote right there, saying a lot, I think. But, moving forward, today we're gonna cover, like I said, the history of gangs in Los Angeles. And I just wanted to kind of jump into that. Originally, when you had gangs, they weren't calling themselves gangs. They dealt with themselves as like clubs. Like the Zoot Suiters, they came around. Those are brown seeds or Hispanic people. And they called themselves the Zoot Suiters, which interestingly I found out that was shared between black and brown people. We all kind of Zoot Suited, although they kind of just show the brown side of it. It's definitely both of our, people collectively doing that, which is important. But in any event, so, they weren't calling themselves gangs. They were cliques. You have like the Slauson boys and different cliques like that who came around.
True indeed. So we wanted to give you all a brief timeline of the gangs in Los Angeles in terms of their origin. And like Jaquil said, they started out as clubs. So as early as the 40s, and you can do some research on your own, PBS has a really good website where they break down the history of the now 38th Street Gang beginning in the Zoot Suit era. And, excuse me, one of the things that needs to be mentioned is that not only was the Zoot Suiter the style of clothing during that time, but it was also a way of, the so-called Latinos to show their fashion conscientiousness in America. So that was the way that they were trying to embrace American culture. Of course, a lot of the Zoot Suiters were harassed by police, brutalized by police, and interesting play you can watch starring Edward James Olmos is called Zoot Suit, and it actually gives a really interesting look at that whole history. And then it goes into the Sleepy Lagoon murders, and that would be part of the origin of at least the 38th Street and some other gangs that would follow, such as Florencia and many of the barrios we have today. On to the brief history of clubs. So at least in Watts, in the east side of Los Angeles, many of our youngsters during like the late 50s and early 60s, they began starting clubs, which is just like it is now. You start social clubs, you get together, and you all of a sudden have a name. And so the term gang didn't start until way after that. One of the references I think is good to mention would be Crips and Bloods. It's directed by Stacy Peralta, and gives a really
Netflix,
good
right?
Yes, it gives a really good history. Netflix. Stacy Peralta, he was one of the fathers of skateboards, which is an interesting take on his career.
Right.
But in any case, some of the early clubs in Los Angeles were the Slausons, the Businessmen, thank you, and the Gladiators. So what we want to go into now is just how clubs, especially coming out of the Watts riots, and which actually acted as a defense for the community, how that evolved from that point into the Black Power movement. So I wanted Infinite to add on to the idea of how that evolution took place from the Black Power movement to the gangs that we see now. So,
okay, the evolution kind of came from the Black Panther era. You know, a kind of, for lack of a better term, a spinoff.
Okay, so this is after the kind of destruction of the Black Panther movement.
Yeah, like right towards the end, where you would go into the late '60s, moving into the early '70s. From my understanding, some of the black clubs, so to speak, started coming together, and what evolved out of that is what we know today as Crips. Again, like in the late '60s.
Okay.
And again, from my understanding, it was a misprint in a newspaper back in 1972, if I'm not mistaken, and it said some incident that happened, and it labeled them Crips. And it was supposed to be crib.
Wow.
So that's like one of the places that I've heard that Crips, where it first became public knowledge to label them as Crips. It kind of evolved and it took off.
Okay.
Again, you know, far as a community support group, so to speak, you know, Crips was as an acronym as Community Revolution in Process.
In progress.
In
right.
progress, yes.
So it still had I guess a flair or flavor of that Black Panther kind of.
Yeah, a positive spin in the early origins. And out of that, another group, which I guess necessarily didn't really want to be a Crip, you know, so these gentlemen, you know, made up their own thing, which came, if I'm not mistaken, again, it came to be the Pyrus.
Oh, okay.
Pyrus, which in turn, they all at that time using the term young blood all the time. So they somewhere along the line they cut out young and this became bloods.
Okay.
You know, for the term of slang, talking to each other like, "Hey, what's up, blood? What's up, young blood?" You know.
But that was more like in a reference of brotherhood, huh? Between each other.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so that would be like, from my understanding of some of the early origins, which I'm sure there's a few other stories that people would debate how it came about, but I'm pretty sure all of them got some validity to them as well.
Right, and I think one of the things that we really wanted to delve into, which will come out in this show, is the mentality that's connected with gangs and that whole evolution. So the question that we wanted to ask everyone is, how is it that clubs evolved into revolutionary groups and then they wound up evolving into gangs? And one of the things that needs to be mentioned is the government's role in dividing our people in Los Angeles and specifically all over the nation. And I think whether or not people like it, we should be aware that history has shown that the U.S. government has played a key role in dividing people in their communities, not only in countries, states, and around the globe. Is something that has been very typical of certain people within the government. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about how that happened in terms of the revolutionary groups and them dissolving into gangs.
Yeah, so when you look at the FBI and COINTELPRO, which basically deals with the counterintelligence program, you know, J. Edgar Hoover was the head of it, and I kind of delved into the actual FBI files, and I took out a little excerpt from it, and it said, "This is This is the actual foundation of their execution as it relates to the FBI during the '60s and even before that." So it basically says, "No opportunity should be missed to exploit through counterintelligence techniques the organization and personal conflicts of the leadership of the groups, and where possible." An effort should be made to capitalize upon existing conflicts between competing black national organizations. So when you look at that, they would use any tactic to increase the infighting between certain groups. One that stands out particularly to me is between the Black Panther Party and US organization. It's a well-known fact that the FBI sent forged letters to these different organizations stating or causing, beef between the two to be, increased. And then that led into actual fighting against the groups.
A classic example of divide and conquer.
Exactly.
Right. Or like, the whole West Coast, East Coast, Biggie Smalls, Tupac thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So through that's like a precursor to, Crips and Bloods and things of that nature. You see how black people or people of the same community started to fight amongst each other. There was some undermining that caused that to occur. So, yeah, I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And then, even in the sense of how it was able to happen, and I think that kind of goes back to maybe like integration in the sense that, there was a point in time where we had our own everything. And then once we integrated amongst them, we kind of lost all our own stuff and tried to integrate and use their stuff and be accepted amongst their system. And so I think that's interesting how they're able to dictate to us how even our own, pro-black movements are supposed to go. They try to influence even hip-hop and other things. Yeah, definitely.
I want to know more about the mentality in terms of gangbanging, and if you could shed some light on and the whole idea of not only the gangster mentality, where that comes from, and what that entails in the gangster lifestyle.
Okay. Again, as stated earlier, it originally started off as a positive direction. And I would say from experience that ego, being egotistical, pride, and a bittersweet dose of loyalty, right? Because loyalty can be good and bad. Those ingredients would make, somebody that's misled, misguided, that has a lack of knowledge of self to be a very dangerous person, striving for a goal, a common goal. Because originally it was like the common goal was positivity, for the community, for self, for pro-blackness and so on and so forth. Somewhere along the line, which I would say contribute to ego, pride, loyalty, money, women,
right.
Drugs.
Right.
Once you throw all that into the pot, it becomes a wicked gumbo.
Right. No, you're right and exact for mentioning that. When you go back and you look at the history of like the Zoot Suiters, right? They kind of formed because they were getting, mistreated by the police. The Navy would come in when they were on, after break, whatever, being out at sea. So they'd come in amongst their cities and then harass their women, pick fights with them. So they kind of formed a group to stick together because of that.
Exactly. And what in turn that you become the very thing that you're fighting against.
That's interesting.
So, so when you take that mentality, when you coming from the 70s into the 80s, right? So that mentality, it's like a snowball. It's catching effect. It's getting bigger and bigger. Right. And so, you go from fist fighting to sticks, to chains, to switchblades, to guns. Right. So it's a progression.
Right.
It's like a universal law. I mean, when you really do the knowledge to it.
Right, for sure. Indeed, I see it. Because I can't let you, you beat up one of my friends, I got to beat up two of your friends. And you hit one of my friends with the bat, then I got to hit four of your friends with the steel pipe.
And what is the reason for doing this? It's because I'm loyal.
And that ego, right? They did this to me, us.
Yeah.
My block.
Exactly. So that mentality is that you take it to the streets. And then once you start off with, with your quote unquote enemies, it becomes uncontrollable. And then as a teenager, you exhibit that same actions, that same energy to your parents, to your grandparents. So you don't have no respect for authority. Right?
Right.
Because you become the very thing that you're fighting against. And when you give it to a youngster, that's too much. That weight is too much to bear.
Right. Well, so let's take that back a moment. So Jerule was building on the COINTELPRO. We know that prior to the cocaine epidemic, people were dealing with heroin, and that had a huge effect on black and brown people in communities. And then at a certain point, it went from they called it the war on drugs. It was a war on poverty, and of course we know that wasn't white people that they were raising that war on, right? I mean, let's just be honest. It wasn't Beverly Hills and Encino and stuff like that, right? So, and then they're bringing crack cocaine. So then, that also hits black and brown communities really hard. So now you have families being broken up, not only just because of the drug of crack cocaine, but, like you said, we're looking at the street aspect of it. So now, versus hanging out on the block, chilling with my friends, right? I'm like, oh, man, I can get that money now, right? I mean, you want to add on to that, how crack cocaine in the street and how that interacted with with the gangs?
Well, from a gang member aspect, crack was lovely.
Okay.
Because crack was the fuel to energize the machine, right? So when crack came in, you had the availability for finances, to use that money, to buy arms, to buy crack spots, to buy luxury cars, to buy women, to buy people in general,
right.
So now you got, that ego again is wants you to be a star, a ghetto star, so to speak. So crack gave you that vehicle.
Right, sure indeed. You wanted to add on to that before we get into our first break here?
Oh, I just want people to understand the connection between the government, crack cocaine, and gangs. And I think, without the government part of it, you wouldn't have the other two. So it's something that we need to reflect on in terms of what's going on in our communities or what has gone on and torn our communities apart.
Right, indeed, that's a great point. So we'll pause for a moment and go to this quick break, and after that we'll continue our conversation. Peace.
This segment of Knowledge of Self Radio was brought to you by EBS Multimedia, a multimedia service provider for all your audio and visual needs. If you need a logo design for your company or a video promo for your product, like EBS Multimedia on Facebook at facebook.com/Earthbound Sound.
I'm a G-O-D. I'm a G-O-D. I'm a G-O-D.
The sun, the seven, the moon, the star, follow me now, see?
I'm a G-O-D. I'm a G-O-D. I'm a G-O-D. I'm a G-O-D.
Hey.
I'm a G-O-D. I'm a G-O-D. I'm a G-O-D.
The sun, the seven, the moon, the star, follow me now, see?
I'm a G-O-D. I'm a G-O-D. I'm a G-O-D.
The sun, the seven, the moon, the star, follow me now, see?
Peace. Welcome back from the show. This is Knowledge Self Radio. I'm your host, Jerule Allah.
Peace, Jerule Allah.
Peace, infinite God Allah.
Name's Toure Allah.
Indeed. So before we went to break, we were just building on, crack cocaine and how that affected gangs and black and brown communities in the neighborhood. So Infinite, was talking about how it's just a great thing when crack cocaine came into the neighborhood. I can imagine for many reasons, like you were saying.
All negative reason, of course.
Right. Well,
yeah.
Negative to a civilized person, but when you're dealing with that lifestyle, I guess I could see how the possibility of being able to make a lot of money, being able to drive that Mercedes or that BMW.
Yes, sir.
And then of course that comes with the women at that point once you what you said.
Yeah.
That's all negative because
absolutely
you don't necessarily want a woman for that kind of reason or who wants you for that reason. But God, add on as far as that early element or area.
Okay. Yeah. So once the crack started flowing through the neighborhoods, particularly in the early about 83, 84, 85. It was easy. It was accessible, and you made this money $2,000 or $3,000 a day.
Wow.
That's
a lot of money to make for a young man.
Exactly. And you're talking really about maybe 10 or 15 people, that's in these particular spots.
Mm-hmm.
crack spots.
Right. So it's not the whole hood per se, but
Nah, it's not, because again, you got your people that's gonna make money and your people that's not. So, that money bought guns. It bought guns. It bought shelter. So again, right? So you a 14, 15-year-old kid and you hanging around these gangsters, and they giving you avenues to put money in your pocket. They feeding you. They giving you a place to stay. So in essence, that's like love.
right.
You know,
That's
it's the street love.
That's the beginning to a family structure.
Exactly. And so then, you know, the kid takes that, and then you ultimately you become a soldier in this. And crack had a big thing to play in that, because the finances. Because if it wasn't no finances, then would nobody have been selling no crack? Crack would have been what it was. Because what I know is in the South Central area, meth is not. That is not selling in South Central. That's not the choice of drug.
Right. Maybe in Simi Valley.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe in another area, you know, but not then, especially in the 80s, you know. So crack was the money. It was an end to justify the means.
But I think that's important that you mention that, because that just goes to show and prove how that was meant to hit a certain area, a certain demographic.
Absolutely. Because it was already nose candy, you know, snorting crack. I mean, snorting cocaine, just the powder.
Right.
So they already knew that it was a Jones for cocaine to begin with. So put it in another form that'll sell faster.
Right.
So that basically just tore the hood up, you know, tore the streets up, you know, left really like a generation decimated to an extent, you know, all the way from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean. It was clean across the board. You know, it hit all ghettos. Right. And even to this very day, it is hitting the middle areas, you know, the places that you wouldn't expect it.
Right, in the South.
Exactly, it's hitting the South. And that is why that you take some drugs from here, Los Angeles, at a price, and you can sell it for double in one of these other little states.
Right, because it's hard to get
Exactly, it's hard to get out there, and it's relatively new. It's like burnt out here. You know, we in 2013. We talking in the early 80s. So LA is cooked, so to speak. Stick a fork in it, it's done. You know, so then you branch out and you go to these other states, and it's selling like hotcakes there, though. So this machine is still moving. Now, crack right now today, it is not just real big in the hood. It's not. It's there, but it's nothing like it was 15, 20 years ago.
So it's kind of simmered down a bit, huh?
So
Exactly.
do you feel that being said, that there's going to be something else that kind of comes and takes its place?
It always is. You know, you can make the argument. I mean, you know what? But that hard, you know, to take out, you know, to literally turn the neighborhood inward, turn it down. You know, that's already struggling to begin with. You know, you in the ghetto already. Can you make the ghetto worse than what it is? Obviously, yeah, because history, we know it already happened. They turned the ghetto worse than what it was. So we can say now that, well, maybe ecstasy. Nah, it hit, but it had nowhere near the effect that crack had.
Right.
You know, like crack, heroin, you know, or sherm. You know, it's really heroin and sherm is like nowhere near what crack did.
Right.
You know,
that was like the next step as far as big.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I know, Toure, you wanted to, and I don't think we could really mention crack in L.A. Without kind of mentioning the people that you wanted to come across. So.
Well, I think we need to go back to like where all this started, because and that's really. You know, that's the reason why it's really good that Infinite God is here, because, you know, he's telling you firsthand with what his involvement was and what he witnessed. So for the most part, one of the books that we are drawing off of today is titled Dark Alliance by Gary Webb, who was a journalist during the time that he broke this story about the quote-unquote crack cocaine conspiracy, the CIA, and South Central Los Angeles. So just to bring you up to speed briefly, to begin with, Gary Webb was a San Jose Mercury News journalist. And apparently the way it was written in his book, he received a letter from a woman who actually had spoken of her boyfriend, who at that time was heavily involved in the cocaine trade. As time went on, following certain leads, Gary Webb found a web of networks and individuals, which would include narcotics agents, people allegedly in the CIA.
Wow.
And then he also found a connection between these entities and Rick Ross, Freeway Rick Ross.
Okay.
Real Rick Ross.
The real Rick Ross.
Not the fat rapper dude.
No.
From the South. Okay.
Not the real Rick Ross. And just so that I won't step on Rick Ross's toes, because he's very good at telling his own story. I had the opportunity to watch him speak at Locke High School in Hobbs Hall, and I'll tell you why that's ironic. But in essence, he talked to the students about, what that area meant for him. It was basically a stronghold in terms of money and dope. And, he said he had several houses during that time where he held one or the other. And he told him, he said, these were my stomping grounds. This was my area around here. So my high school is in Watts, by the way, so that you're aware of it. But for the most part, the drugs that were sold, not only just in the United States, but in South Central, was said to have been used, the monies from those sales were being used in the war in Central America, specifically in Nicaragua. So then you have like this connection. Okay, we're talking about the street gangs of Los Angeles unknowingly were financing a war in Central America, and this was during the Reagan administration, which was in the 80s. And the whole thrust during that war was to prevent the spread of communism as spread, or at least being supported by the Sandinistas. So basically, the connection that Gary Webb made was that the United States, they were fueling their war effort against the Sandinistas to, using the sales from cocaine, crack cocaine, were purchasing arms, and of course, trafficking those down to Central America. And I mean, the book is so detailed. There are so many names and cartels and countries involved in it. One of the other books we can show the viewing audience is Cocaine Politics.
Okay.
And again, it's another really detailed explanation of the connection between, the CIA, Central America, and the narco trafficking that's going on. So now we're taking it back to what Infinite was saying about how this type of activity, this government-supported and involved activity, destroyed communities at the expense of political ideologies. And one thing I need to mention, let's put this up for him. This is another book that we're drawing off of. It's called Guerrilla Warfare by Che Guevara. So those of you who used to wear the T-shirt and you never read the book, shame on you, because now I don't see you wearing the T-shirt. So in any case, if you look in the back of this particular publication, it gives you a really interesting timeline about the war effort that took place in the 1980s, the same time that our communities in Los Angeles and other areas in the United States were being flooded by crack cocaine. So it deserves a little bit more research in terms of who allegedly was involved in this and who should be convicted. But of course, another reference you can look on the CIA website. They'll break down the allegations, and then they'll break down their, how they refuted the claim and the information. They'll say, this is what's said, but then this is what we found out. Of course, they're not going to accept that, responsibility for any of that.
Right. Nor divulge all that information.
No, never.
Right.
And the last thing, as far as Locke High School, I'm just going to say it, a town hall meeting was held there in the mid-'90s. And they had then CIA director, his last name was Douche. He went in and he had to answer some questions from the members of the community about the CIA involvement, because not only did Gary Webb connect with other community leaders once he released this, but Congresswoman Maxine Waters also attempted to bring these allegations in front of the Congress. I mean, there are a lot of there's just a web of people and entities who are involved in this, I might as well say a very confusing time in Los Angeles. Right. So when we're talking about gang violence, drugs, we can't leave the government out of that because they are largely responsible for the guns and the drugs coming in there. And I really like to know about the chemistry of crack cocaine and what was going on with that.
Yeah, I mean, before I get into that, it's kind of interesting. I mean, when you really think about it, use your logic and rationale. Nobody in the hood has a plane, right? Nobody has airports.
Right.
Nobody
Can't
has
drive to these places.
Right. Nobody has farms or the capacity to grow coca leaves like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be a little bit more going on to get these types of things into the hood. You know what I mean?
Not much anyway.
Right.
At those quantities that it was coming, I mean, that was huge. It was like plane loads, literally, on a regular basis.
Right. So, I find that interesting too. So looking at a little bit of the chemistry of crack, basically, I'm not going to go too far into it, but basically you have your cocaine, and then you use like a sodium bicarbonate, and you heat it, and then it causes there to be a free base. Basically, the reason why it's so addictive, you actually smoke it, and the reason why it's so addictive is because it only takes about 8 seconds for what you smoke to get to your brain. It's like instantaneous, and then your the chemical reaction that occurs in your brain, the dopamine being produced the very first time causes you to be in a very euphoric state. And it causes you to feel more confident in yourself. It brings your mood up, those types of things. So when you look at the communities that this stuff was brought to, by and large, at that time, the morale was starting to go down. You know what I mean? Like after, you had your black nationalist movements and things of that nature in the 60s into the 70s. After that, you had your heroin and stuff like that come in. Morale was starting to go down. So bring these drugs in, it's like fertile ground for people to get addicted to it. So so like I said, 8 seconds to reach your brain.
I know something else that was interesting. I looked up a few things, which now I understand why people who indulge in those kind of drugs, right, have burnt lips like that. It's because the pipe needs to be so short because the smoke only lasts in that form, meaning its potency, right? So the longer the pipe is, or whatever utensil it is you're going to use to smoke out of, the less potent your stuff is going to be. So they would try to make the pipe as short as possible so they can get the best effect, thus burning their lips because it gets all hot from them burning it up.
And I wanted to add on is that when I started working in Watts, the one thing that I found, it was just weird to me walking into a gas station and you see crack pipes being sold at a gas station.
Wow.
I won't tell you which gas station it is, but there are several in Watts alone where you can walk into a gas station and right up there with the gum, you're gonna see some drug paraphernalia too. Straight up.
Oh, man, that's crazy. That's crazy. Also, why it was so devastating is because the high from it only lasts about 5 to 10 minutes. So, and then your first high is usually like the most euphoric. All the highs after that never measure up, so you're always chasing that feeling. So that's what devastated the communities, because every 5 or 10 minutes you're trying to get high. So you got to find money, you got to find different things to support that habit. So you had mothers selling their babies' clothes, damn near selling their babies, to get high off the stuff. You got, fathers
stealing from their mothers.
It's just very brutal situation. So anytime you take a person's, what's the word I'm looking for? Anytime you take a person's, empathy away, then you're gonna have a troublesome situation. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to build on relating to the actual chemistry. It's more about how it actually affected the people and why it was so devastating in the community.
It seems like they almost set the psychology for that drug to have such a big effect on people.
I mean, hindsight is 20/20, right? So we know in retrospect when we look back, it definitely seemed like it was something that was calculated. To throw that type of addictive drug into a community and a group of people with low self-esteem, And this is a generation from the Jim Crow era all the way back to slavery. So the mental was already beaten down.
Right.
And so I look at it like, okay, well, you had heroin, right? And then you had angel dust, and then the powder cocaine. Those is all like a chronology, so to speak, of drugs that they keep in place to keep you down in that state. Right. Let's keep the low self-esteem exactly where it's at. So
make you feel like you're like the feeling that you get makes you feel good.
Yeah, but only for real quick though. We don't want you to think you're gonna get out that hole.
But it's not reality.
Yeah, we're gonna show you a glimpse of light in darkness, and then we're gonna shut the door. And you need another fix so you can see that light again.
Right. That's interesting.
And just think about the laws that came out of that time period, like the 3 strikes and you're outlaw, and then the Rockefeller laws. I know the thing that many of us know here on the panel is that it's been said that the convictions, meaning when people were convicted for powder cocaine, their convictions, or at least the sentencing, was less than those who were convicted of crack cocaine possession.
Exactly, and what that does is it targeted specific communities.
Right.
Because you very rarely are going to find some powder cocaine in South Central or in the hood. You're going to find rocks. You're going to find it as crack, which you're going to get the extended sentence. But if we go out to Van Nuys, right, you're going to find some powder, probably somebody peddling some powder, and they're going to get a slap on the wrist, because it's 2 different drugs. But what does that tell me? It tells me that it's original people in these areas and it's others in these areas. So we don't want to condemn, even though essentially you would think logically it's the same thing, though. Right. Why are you trying to make it be something that it's not? And I want to say pardon self to the panel and the listeners and the viewers, because it's an excellent book that I should have brought called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander.
Okay.
Right.
The New Jim Crow.
New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Okay. It delves very deep into this whole crack epidemic and the effects that it took on people, in the urban community, and then from the suburban community as well, different levels, real deep.
Right. I think that's a good point that you guys hit on, the difference in the charges of powder versus the crack form. I know we did a show on jail and that whole institution and how they make a lot of money. As I was doing my research, I realized that something like 80% of black males in prison or in jail for non-violent offenses, basically for drug charges.
True indeed.
Wow.
True indeed. If you look at Paul Butler's Let's Get Free, he spends, then the whole book is about how many people are in there for drug offenses. True indeed, there is definitely a connection.
So it's clear it's a strategic situation that was in place to not only disrupt the community from the standpoint of getting people hooked on drugs, but to get people hooked on the money, and then in turn leading them to be imprisoned and stuff like that. So another thing that's interesting, when you think about it, there's an actual chemistry that you need to deal with to make crack.
Right.
Not saying that people in the hood aren't, don't have the ability to be chemists in a sense, but it's said, I think it's said that Rick Ross was one of the first to actually make crack. So if that's the case, it said that he couldn't even really read at that time when he was, out there like that. How did he all of a sudden develop the ability to be a chemist and then start cooking stuff up like that was so potent? You know what I mean? It just seemed a little bit strange to me. So
Right. How do you learn where to go to get those chemicals?
Right, the right chemicals, the mixture, the right amount, so that it would be so brutally addicting. And I don't know. It just seems a little bit strange.
Maybe it was divine intervention.
Negative.
Indeed. On that note, we're about to head into a break. So after we come with the break, we'll close up with our third segment. Peace. Catch you after the break.
Are you a diabetic? Need some energy? Need to quench your thirst? Try Pitbull Sugar-Free Energy Drink, the only energy drink named suitable for diabetics by the American Diabetic Association. And it's now available with no calories, no carbs, no sugar, and no fat, and a smooth, natural blend of energy, vitamins, and minerals. Need to quench your thirst? Try Pitbull Sugar-Free Energy Drink, the only energy drink named suitable for diabetics by the American Diabetic Association. And it's now available with no calories, no carbs, no sugar, and no fat, and a smooth, natural blend of energy, vitamins, and minerals. Pitbull Sugar-Free Energy Drink is the healthiest, best-tasting energy drink around. For more information and online ordering with free shipping, please visit hiphopbev.com. Remember, Pitbull Sugar-Free Energy Drink, suitable for diabetics, great for everyone.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge of Self show. I'm Jerule Allah.
Jerule Allah.
Infinite God Allah.
Toure Allah. Peace.
Indeed. So, it's not all bad. There's definitely some solutions out there available, and I think that's the most important part of the show. It's just showing you guys that, again, it's not all bad. There's ways to get out of it. So in this part, we're definitely going to talk about some solutions or potential solutions in which you can employ to get your young men and women out of this drug scene. So you guys want to add on?
Yeah, I would say it's a little different between a juvenile and an adult.
Okay.
About the solutions, and so for this particular segment, I would focus on the juvenile.
What do you classify as a juvenile? What age range are we working on?
Basically, the U.S. standard, 18 and under.
Okay.
Because they're so influential.
Okay.
And they can be led astray.
For sure.
So when you're young, you really just learning all this, opposed to being 28, 29, and been doing it for over 10 years.
Right.
So me, myself in particular, I didn't start cleaning myself up, so to speak, until like my late 20s. However, as a juvenile, I always was conscientious of I could not keep living this way, and I would not. But I was willing to take the chance and roll the dice and see. Always had that thought of death or jail. It wasn't like I was oblivious to those situations that I knew that could happen.
Right.
I really didn't go off into my background, but at 15, I was shot, I think 4 times. And the only thing I did was make me worse.
Right.
Because revenge came in.
Right.
And of course, my
your
cohorts,
homies is pumping you up.
Yeah, my peers, they got me. They held me down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that from experience, what I would have liked was for somebody to, I needed to be took away, like out of the hood. I needed to get away. I wasn't strong enough as a juvenile to be around my homeboys all the time.
Okay.
And I needed that influence. I needed some place to go, and really not super structured. I don't want to go to no boot camp or nothing. So it's really like you got to make that connection to show them, not to sound cliche, but, show them like you care and that you're willing to be there. Because in essence, that's what you're looking for. Juvenile's looking for. I'm looking for that family.
Right.
That family other than my family. Because my family, when they're trying to show me what's right, they're too strict. So the homies are my family, but they let me do what I want to do. Right. So it's going to be a challenge. But that connection has got to be made to let them know, because they do know. I'm not, let's not be blind to as if they're not smart, like they're idiots or something. They're smart enough to understand that road is a road to nothing. There's no winning in that road. But their mindset is that I don't care anyway, though. I'm going to be nothing because everything around me is nothing. So once we give them the knowledge of themselves and who they really are, when they start taking that love for themselves, not just saying it, when you manifesting that wisdom to where you really love yourself, where you say it and you show it, but they're not going to know that if they're not taught that. And that's a hell of a road, hell of a hill to climb, but it has to be made, and it has to be done consistently. That's a piece of the turning the situation around, or prevention, with the short amount of time you got to build. That's a piece, but that's a very important piece that I would consider.
Indeed. And I think you hit on a good point. And one thing I drew out of that is the connection from being that young man to trying to find something, and you kind of, they get stopped at the gang road, right? They meet that dude who's really cool, kind of like the big brother, father-ish type figure, right? And then that guy kind of, although he's led astray, he's also
he already in left field.
Right. That's interesting. So it seems like one of the solutions you're talking about is having some type of mentorship, or also you mentioned getting people out of the neighborhood. Now sometimes it's just not physically possible for people to move, but there's all kind of local museums and things like that.
It's things to do, but again, right? We can't not have blinders. When I say get them out the hood can be 5 blocks. And most times, that's all that kid know. Right. I just know just certain perimeter. I don't even know about Torrance.
Right.
I don't know about
Long
Santa
Beach
Monica. I don't know about. I don't even know they got good areas. You think of Long Beach, I think of Snoop. I don't know Long Beach.
Right.
I don't know it's an aquarium out there. I don't know it's nice areas out there.
Right.
So, and you can find free things to do. It's not nothing that you got to spend for or take them directly out the hood. You don't got to drive, 30, 40 miles. It can be straight down the block or somewhere.
Right.
But just take them out of that environment. Like when you walk into a place, the aura, the energy in there is positive, and it's no BSing in there.
For sure.
So that's really what I'm talking about.
And that was the thing I wanted to put out to the listeners. We would like people who are interested in this type of intervention for young people to hit us up on our Facebook. And because this is a collective responsibility of all of us. I mean, the guys right here on the panel, I can tell you just from who they are, they are people who have reached out to youth in many different ways. So what we're asking is that you hit us up on Facebook, your organizations, your ideas, so we could actually put our minds together in terms of creating this type of intervention where we do take youth, whether it be monthly, on the weekend, elsewhere for a period of time. Because, I can say that too, just with the young people that I work with, that's one of the things that some of them fear. They fear leaving their neighborhood, even to the point to where a couple of students had got accepted into universities in different states, and they were like not necessarily terrified, but just they felt very uneasy. Yes, right. They're like, I don't really want to leave home,
Right. Although home is dangerous, it's still a danger that and you're used to, huh?
Right. Fear the unknown.
Yeah, it's a comfort level, It's that's crazy. The Facebook actually is facebook.com// Knowledge of Self Radio. So yeah, definitely get on there and add on.
And one thing as far as the intervention, I know there's a really good organization. I've seen them on my campus. They're called KUSH, not weed. KUSH like the ancient civilization. KUSH Incorporated, and they primarily operate in Nickerson Gardens. But when they've come on campus, they reach out to the gang affiliates and the youth who may be going in that direction. So I like to say peace to those brothers, and hopefully we'll hear from you guys soon. And what do y'all think the police should do?
That's a good one.
In terms of intervention.
I'll just go ahead and say I think there's 2 things that the police should do. One, you guys got to stop selling the drugs yourself in the community.
True indeed.
And that's a big part of it too. The other part of it, not everyone you run up on is a criminal. In all seriousness, I think anytime that you approach someone in a certain manner, you're going to draw a certain reaction from that person. And so I think they should definitely take a little bit more time to see who it is that they're approaching and deal with people accordingly. Not everyone's a criminal.
Yeah, but you know what? Well, I would say that the police, in large part, I really see them as being a gang within themselves. It's a hierarchy. Your hands is tied at certain levels. It's what you can do and what you can't do, what you shouldn't do. You can't be too by the law and be looked down by your superiors, because that is not the code.
Right.
You know? So I understand that the lines get kind of blurry, you know. However, in the same breath, you know, I'm not like totally against the police, because it is a reason that they, you know, that they're there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I just, you know, just apply the law, you know, the right way. That's it. Just be fair. That's the only thing that I would say. You know, just be fair, because in most cases the law is right. It's just the people that's administering that is demonizing it.
And the way that they administer it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say.
Yes, sir.
Indeed, indeed. Also, for those who are in the LA area, every last Sunday of the month, a group of very righteous brothers get together at Lamarck Park.
And sisters.
And sisters too, for itself. Brothers and sisters, because we're definitely about applying both, the strength and positive for both coming together. In any event, we'll be down there on the last Sunday of every month. That's at 2 o'clock. And there's a great group of brothers, so you can get everything from mentorship to friendship, educational experience, everything.
A lot of good building, you know,
Yeah.
food,
Mm-hmm.
diet, you know, a whole bunch of things, you know. Come down there and enjoy.
Bring the
build.
family, bring the babies. You know, it's just a universal situation. You know.
Absolutely.
And we wanted to thank Global Positions Solutions for also being one of our sponsors of this program.
Indeed. So as we come up with the close of the show, again, there's a couple books we want you guys to check out. The Dark Alliance by Gary Webb. It's a great book. Also, The Man That Everyone Has on the Shirt and Knows Nothing About. Get the book, read about him, learn about him. There's a documentary on Netflix also.
Mm-hmm.
I've yet to watch that, but it's on my to-watch list.
Yeah. And also the new Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. You know, I'm real adamant about that, man. If you want to know about the laws with the drugs and the 3-strike laws and things of that nature, it's real good. Michelle Alexander, the new Jim Crow.
The new Jim Crow, indeed. Also, A People's History of the United States, 1492 and present. That's a great book by Howard Zinn. So definitely do the knowledge to that. Check that out. Also, we also have something for you guys to do. We would like if you could find at least one community resource and post that on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Knowledge to Self Radio. And as far as viewing material, I would like to recommend you guys watch, and this is on YouTube, The Great Hope, or
The Bastards of the Party.
Yeah, Bastards of the Party. There's another one also you recommended, Terrell.
Oh, the
Great White Hope?
The Last White Hope,
The Last
America's
White
Drug
Hope.
War.
Yeah, say that again one more time, God, for the people.
The Last White Hope, America's Drug War.
Okay,
That's
indeed.
an interesting piece.
Now, I don't know if this is off topic, but for you mathematicians out there, it's a good movie out there called Pi.
Pi, I heard of Pi.
Pi.
The Life of Pi?
P-I. No.
Not the Life of Pi.
No, not the Life of Pi. It's
Okay.
Pi.
Okay.
P-I.
P.I.
Real mathematician type intellectual thinker.
Okay. Okay, indeed. I'm gonna check that.
Don't know
one
the director or who stars in it. Sorry about that.
Okay,
I'm
nah.
coming off the fly right now.
Cool. So again, we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you on the next edition of the Knowledge Self Radio Show. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.